1 year. That's all. Just 1 year. Most people waste it. They scroll through it, sleep through it, complain through it. And before they know it, another year is gone. Nothing changed. The same habits. The same excuses. The same life. But what if this year was different? What if this was the year you finally got serious? The year you stopped waiting. The year you stopped starting over. The year you became the person you've been talking about becoming. Because the truth is, a single year of discipline can create a life most people won't recognize. Most people underestimate a year. They think it's a long time. Until it passes. Then suddenly, it feels like a moment. That's why years matter. Because years become lives. The life you're living today is the result of the years behind you. The habits you repeated. The standards you accepted. The decisions you made. Everything compounds. The problem is, most people only understand compounding when it comes to money. They don't understand that habits compound. Discipline compounds. Knowledge compounds. Confidence compounds. Every day you improve by a small amount. The gap grows. Not immediately. Gradually. Then one day, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. That's how transformation happens. Not overnight. Over time. One workout. One book. One difficult decision. One disciplined day. Repeated again and again. Most people quit because they don't see results fast enough. They plant the seed. Then dig it up a week later to see if it's growing. Success doesn't work that way. Growth happens beneath the surface first. Before the results. Before the recognition. Before the rewards. That's why patience matters. The strongest people trust the process. Even when they can't see progress. Even when nobody notices. Even when the results are still invisible. Because they understand something most people don't. The person you become during the journey is more valuable than the destination itself. 1 year can teach you discipline. 1 year can build confidence. 1 year can transform your mindset. 1 year can completely change your identity. The question is, what are you going to do with the next 365 days? Because whether you use them or waste them, they are coming. One day at a time. And a year from now, you'll either be proud you started, or wish you had. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they keep starting over. Every Monday. Every month. Every new year. The same promise. The same motivation. The same speech. And then, the same result. Because motivation is not the problem. Consistency is. Anybody can be disciplined for a day. Anybody can be focused for a week. The challenge is staying committed when the excitement disappears. That's where most people lose. Not when things are hard. When things become boring. Because success is boring. Repetition is boring. Discipline is boring. Showing up every day is boring. But that's exactly why it works. Most people are addicted to the feeling of starting. Very few people fall in love with continuing. They want a new plan. A new strategy. A new shortcut. A new secret. When what they really need is to keep going. The truth is, you don't need another fresh start. You need to stop quitting. Read that again. You don't need another fresh start. You need to stop quitting. Because every time you quit, you return to the beginning. Every time you stop, you lose momentum. Every time you walk away, you delay the future you're trying to build. Imagine where you'd be today if you had stayed consistent with something for the last year. One skill, one habit, one goal, one promise. Think about how different your life would look. That's the power of consistency. Small actions, repeated for a long time. Most people underestimate what they can do in a year, because they overestimate what they can do in a week. They want immediate results, immediate proof, immediate success. Life doesn't work that way. The greatest transformations happen slowly, quietly, one day at a time. That's why patience matters. Not because patience feels good, because patience keeps you moving. The people who change their lives are not always the smartest, not always the most talented, not always the most gifted. They're the people who refuse to stop. The people who keep showing up. When they're tired. When they're discouraged. When nobody believes in them. When nobody notices. They keep going. That's the difference. The world celebrates results. But results are built through repetition. Through discipline. Through consistency. That's why this year can be different. Not because you'll be more motivated. Because you'll be more committed. Committed when it's exciting. Committed when it's boring. Committed when it's difficult. Committed when it's lonely. Because commitment outlasts motivation. Every single time. And 1 year from now, you won't be proud that you started. You'll be proud that you never stopped. 1 year from now, you could be a completely different person. Think about that. Not slightly different. Not a little better. Completely different. A different mindset. Different habits. Different standards. Different results. Different life. The question is, will you change by accident? Or by intention? Because change is going to happen either way. Time guarantees that. Growth does not. Most people assume they'll improve eventually. But eventually is dangerous. Eventually becomes later. Later becomes next year. And next year becomes regret. That's why intentional growth matters. Because the person you become tomorrow depends on what you repeatedly do today. Every habit is shaping you. Every routine is shaping you. Every decision is shaping you. Whether you realize it or not. The books you read. The people you spend time with. The thoughts you repeat. The standards you tolerate. All of it matters. Because identity is built through repetition. You become what you repeatedly practice. That's why transformation is not an event. It's a process. A daily process. A private process. A process most people will never see. They'll only see the result. One day they'll look at you and say, "You've changed." And they'll be right. But they won't understand why. They won't see the mornings you showed up when you didn't feel like it. They won't see the sacrifices. The discipline. The consistency. The choices nobody applauded. That's the part nobody sees. The work behind the transformation. Most people want a new life. Without becoming a new person. But a new life requires a new identity. A stronger identity. An identity built on discipline instead of excuses. Responsibility instead of blame. Growth instead of comfort. Because your habits will always rise or fall to match your identity. If you see yourself as average, you'll create average results. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you'll keep quitting. If you see yourself as someone who follows through, you'll find a way to continue. That's why changing your identity changes everything. You stop asking, "What do I need to achieve?" and start asking, "Who do I need to become?" That's the better question. Because achievements come and go. identity remains. The goal isn't just to make more money. The goal is to become disciplined. The goal isn't just to get in shape. The goal is to become healthy. The goal isn't just to succeed. The goal is to become the kind of person success naturally follows. That's real transformation. And it happens slowly. One decision at a time. One habit at a time. One disciplined day at a time. Then one day, you look in the mirror. And the person staring back at you feels different. Stronger. Calmer. More confident. More focused. More capable. Not because life became easier. Because you became better. That's what a year can do. If you stop making excuses. If you stop waiting. If you stop starting over. A year from now, people may not recognize you. More importantly, you may not recognize yourself. And that could be the best thing that ever happens to you. Everyone wants the results. The confidence. The success. The respect. The transformation. But very few people fall in love with the process. The ordinary days. The quiet days. The days when nothing exciting happens. That's where your future is built. Not on the big days. The small ones. Because life is not changed in a moment. It's changed in the moments between moments. The mornings you wake up and choose discipline. The nights you keep going when you're tired. The afternoons when nobody is watching. Those moments seem insignificant. But they're not. They're everything. Most people are waiting for a breakthrough. A lucky break. A life-changing opportunity. But breakthroughs are usually hidden inside ordinary days. Inside repeated effort. Inside consistency. Inside showing up. Again. And again. And again. That's the secret nobody talks about. Success is repetitive. Growth is repetitive. Excellence is repetitive. You do the same things long enough. And eventually they produce different results. The problem is, most people get bored. They want excitement. They want quick wins. They want instant proof that their effort is working. And when that proof doesn't arrive, they quit. Not because they failed. Because they got impatient. Patience is a superpower. Because the greatest rewards often arrive late. Very late. Long after most people would have given up. That's why consistency is so rare. Most people stop. Most people drift. Most people return to old habits. But the people who change their lives stay. They stay committed. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. Even when progress feels invisible. Because they understand something important. The work is working. Even when you can't see it. The seed is growing. Even when it's underground. The foundation is strengthening. Even when nobody notices. That's why you must trust the process. Not because it's easy. Because it's necessary. Every great year is built from ordinary days. Days when you choose growth over comfort. Days when you choose discipline over excuses. Days when you choose your future over your feelings. Those choices add up. Day after day. Week after week. Month after month. Until one day, you look around. And your life is different. Not because of one dramatic moment. Because of hundreds of small moments. Moments nobody saw. Moments nobody applauded. Moments nobody celebrated. But those moments mattered. They always matter. Because your future is not built on the days everybody notices. It's built on the days nobody sees. And if you can master those days, you can change your entire year. Maybe even your entire life. Nobody talks about this part. The part where you decide to change. And suddenly everything becomes harder. Not easier. Harder. Because the moment you start growing, the old version of you starts fighting back. The version that loves comfort. The version that avoids responsibility. The version that always says, tomorrow. Later. Maybe next week. For years. That version has been in control. It created your routines. Your habits. Your excuses. Your limits. And when you decide to become someone new, it doesn't disappear quietly. It resists. That's why change feels uncomfortable. Not because you're doing something wrong. Because you're doing something different. Your mind loves familiarity. Even when familiarity is making you miserable. Even when familiarity is keeping you stuck. It would rather stay in a known struggle than risk an unknown future. That's why so many people return to old habits. Not because the habits are good. Because they're familiar. The human mind craves certainty. And growth rarely feels certain. Growth feels awkward. Growth feels uncomfortable. Growth feels unfamiliar. At first. That's the price of transformation. You have to be willing to feel uncomfortable long enough to become someone new. Most people never reach that point. They mistake discomfort for failure. They think, this must not be working. This is too difficult. Maybe I'm not meant for this. But that's not the truth. The truth is, every new level of your life will feel unnatural before it feels normal. Think about learning to walk. Learning to drive. Learning any skill. At first it felt difficult. Awkward. Uncomfortable. Then eventually, it became part of who you are. Growth works the same way. The confidence you want feels uncomfortable at first. The discipline you want feels uncomfortable at first. The success you want feels uncomfortable at first. Because you're becoming a person you've never been before. And becoming requires change. The old you wants certainty. The new you requires courage. The old you wants comfort. The new you requires discipline. The old you wants immediate rewards. The new you understands delayed gratification. Every day these two versions compete. One pulls you toward comfort. The other pulls you toward growth. One wants excuses. The other wants responsibility. One wants what's easy. The other wants what's possible. And every choice you make strengthens one of them. Every excuse feeds the old you. Every act of discipline feeds the new you. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, the new version grows stronger. Every time you break that promise, the old version regains control. That's why transformation is not one decision. It's 1,000 decisions. Tiny battles. Daily battles. Invisible battles. And the person who wins those battles wins the year. Eventually something incredible happens. The habits that once felt difficult become normal. The discipline that once felt painful becomes automatic. The confidence that once felt impossible becomes natural. You stop fighting yourself. Because you've become the person you were trying to become. That's when everything changes. Not when circumstances change. When identity changes. Because identity drives behavior. And behavior drives results. That's why this year could change everything. Not because the world changes. Because you change. The old you slowly disappears. The excuses lose their power. The comfort zone loses its control. The fear loses its voice. And a stronger version takes its place. A version built through discipline. Built through consistency. Built through courage. One choice at a time. One day at a time. One battle at a time. Until one day, you realize the person who started this journey no longer exists. And that's when you know. This really was the year that changed everything. For a long time, it feels like nothing is happening. You wake up early. Nothing happens. You stay disciplined. Nothing happens. You keep your promises. Nothing happens. You keep showing up. Nothing happens. At least, that's what it looks like from the outside. But beneath the surface, everything is changing. Your mindset is changing. Your standards are changing. Your habits are changing. Your identity is changing. And that's the part most people never see. Because transformation is invisible before it becomes obvious. The tree grows underground before it rises above the ground. The foundation is built before the building appears. The work happens before the reward arrives. That's why most people quit too early. They expect immediate evidence, immediate results, immediate success. And when it doesn't come, they assume they're failing. They're not failing. They're building. The problem is, building isn't exciting. Building is repetitive. Building is slow. Building requires faith. Faith that today's effort matters. Faith that today's sacrifice matters. Faith that today's discipline is creating tomorrow's opportunity. Most people never develop that faith. That's why they stop. They stop 1 week before progress. 1 month before momentum. 1 year before transformation. And they never realize how close they were. That's the tragedy. Not failure. Quitting too soon. Because eventually, the work starts to compound. Everything begins connecting. The habits become easier. The discipline becomes natural. The confidence becomes real. The skills become valuable. The opportunities begin appearing. And suddenly, people think it happened overnight. But you know better. You remember the mornings nobody saw. The sacrifices nobody respected. The effort nobody noticed. The lonely days. The frustrating days. The days you questioned yourself. The days you wanted to quit. Those days mattered. More than anyone realizes. Because those were the days building your future. Most people only celebrate the outcome. But the outcome is just evidence. Evidence of what happened behind the scenes. Evidence of the choices. The standards. The consistency. The discipline. That's why success looks fast from a distance. But feels slow while you're living it. The world sees the result. You lived the process. And the process is always longer than people imagined. That's why patience becomes an advantage. Because patience allows you to stay long enough for compounding to happen. And compounding changes everything. 1 extra page a day becomes knowledge. 1 extra workout becomes strength. 1 extra hour becomes mastery. 1 disciplined choice becomes a new identity. The small things become big things. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The impossible becomes reality. Not because of one giant moment. Because of thousands of tiny moments working together. That's the secret. The year that changes everything rarely changes because of one big event. It changes because you refused to quit. When nobody believed, you continued. When progress was invisible, you continued. When motivation disappeared, you continued. When excuses sounded reasonable, you continued. And eventually, the life you wanted starts appearing. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Habit by habit. Decision by decision. Until one day, you wake up and realize something incredible. You are no longer chasing the future. You're living it. The confidence you wanted. The discipline you wanted. The mindset you wanted. The life you wanted. It's here. Because you stayed long enough. You trusted the process long enough. You believed long enough. And that's when you understand something most people never do. The biggest rewards in life don't go to the most talented. They go to the people who stay committed long enough for their effort to compound. That's what makes a year unforgettable. That's what makes a year life-changing. That's what makes a year. The year that changes everything. Most people spend their lives repeating the same year. Different calendar. Same habits. Different goals. Same excuses. Different dreams. Same actions. And then they wonder why nothing changes. The answer is simple. Because the future cannot be different. If the person creating it remains the same. That's why this year matters. Not because it's another year. Because it could be the year that breaks the cycle. The year you stop starting over. The year you stop negotiating with your goals. The year you stop abandoning yourself. For too long. You've known what needs to be done. You knew the habits. You knew the distractions. You knew the excuses. You knew the truth. The problem was never awareness. The problem was action. Because action is uncomfortable. Action demands responsibility. Action demands discipline. Action demands consistency. And most people spend their lives avoiding those things. That's why most people stay where they are. But not you. Not this time. Because there comes a point where the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. A point where excuses lose their power. A point where comfort loses its control. A point where you finally get tired of your own limitations. That's the turning point. That's where everything begins. Not with motivation. With a decision. A real decision. The kind of decision that changes behavior. The kind of decision that survives difficult days. The kind of decision that continues when excitement disappears. Because anyone can be motivated. Very few people remain committed. And commitment is what changes lives. Commitment on the days you feel strong. Commitment on the days you feel weak. Commitment when nobody believes in you. Commitment when nobody is watching. That's what creates transformation. Not talent. Not luck. Commitment. A year from now, you will meet the person your choices created. Think about that. The future version of you is being built right now. With today's actions. Today's habits. Today's standards. Today's decisions. And that future version is waiting. Waiting to see whether you'll finally become serious. Waiting to see whether you'll finally stop settling. Waiting to see whether you'll finally become the person you promised yourself you would be. The good news. You don't need to change your entire life today. You only need to win today. Then do it again tomorrow. And again the next day. That's how years change. That's how identities change. That's how lives change. One day at a time. One decision at a time. One promise at a time. Until eventually, the impossible becomes normal. The difficult becomes easy. The dream becomes reality. And the person you wanted to become becomes who you are. That's the goal. Not a perfect year. A different year. A year of growth. A year of discipline. A year of courage. A year of keeping promises to yourself. A year you never have to repeat. Because once this year is over, you won't look back with regret. You won't wonder what could have been. You won't wish you had started sooner. You'll know. You gave everything you had. You became more. You grew. You changed. And that's why this won't just be another year. This will be the year that changes everything.